Today we have Austin King with us. And I'll let him tell you guys a little bit about his background. But Austin, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Excited.
Absolutely, brother. So give the people kind of an idea. I know a lot about you. We've had some previous conversations, but I think you've started to gain a presence on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, over the last couple of months here. But if you want to give people kind of a deep dive into your background and why they should have or listen to you because of your experience in the space.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I've been in crypto for about 8 years at this point, but I really only started to tweet more actively the past 6 months, but much more actively the past 3 months. So yeah, it's funny being more active on Twitter. But anyway, yeah, I got involved. Originally, I was still in university. I was studying computer science at Harvard. Originally got interested in crypto more from the software side. Like I thought it was very interesting that you could run decentralized software. And so I started teaching myself how to program on blockchains. At this point, I ended up getting pretty involved with Ripple. They invested in this company that I started when I was still a senior at Harvard. And I worked across XRP, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. It was actually called the Interledger Network, if anybody's familiar with that protocol. My company basically took that from a research proposal, kind of interesting thing, and scaled it up to be an actual network that companies could rely on. And so did that for a couple of years, sold that company to Ripple, worked there for a year, and then I spun out to create Omni. So that's kind of a quick zoom out over the
I
last
love
8 years. Yeah.
So yeah, so you were kind of Interledger Protocol, like
Mhm.
the real
We
deal.
we were the team that turned Interledger Protocol into like Interledger Network running in prod for companies. Yeah.
Yeah, which I don't like. People talk about that. So when just for context, like what's the time frame for people?
Mhm. Yeah, I think the first version of the Interledger protocol, there were a few versions, but they iterated over time. The one that really scaled out was version 4. I think the first one was drafted around 2015, but yeah, so I was still in university and it was actually the Ripple research team that I got pretty close to, and they actually spun out to work full time on this network around the same time. But they had some initial implementations in JavaScript and stuff, but it wasn't really built so that companies could rely on it. It was more kind of proving things out in a demo-like way. And so my company did the core work of connecting some other networks. So like I'm the one who designed the part of the protocol that integrated Bitcoin. But primarily what we did was we figured out how to run it at scale, processing like thousands of transactions per second. We processed over 10 billion before Ripple bought the company. And so it was really like we were the big jump from like, here's this interesting idea on paper to like, how do we get companies to rely on this and convince them that this is a protocol worth integrating into their infrastructure? And so that was the main gap that we filled for a few years there.
So what do you? I mean, obviously it's payments, but like, I guess explain to people the value that this brings to corporations if they were to adopt it and integrate it into their system.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool in the sense that it was so efficient that you could actually stream payments real time. So every second that goes by, you can do 10 payments. So there were things where people would be watching videos, and as they were watching videos, people would be streaming micropayments to them. And then it was really cool because the person sending the money could be on the XRP ledger, and the person receiving the money could be on the Bitcoin network. So it's really just a way for money to just flow pretty seamlessly over the internet. Ripple says that a lot, like that their goal is to make value flow as seamlessly as information flows over the internet today. And so Interledger was a very literal representation of that.
So they did a pilot with like Coil, so you could basically be on a website, and for however much time you were on the website, you'd be streaming a payment for receiving that information. Is that kind of the
Yep.
gist of it?
Yeah, that was one of the use cases. They were one of the biggest users of the network. Yeah.
Do you think that like a Netflix or somebody that provides media in that same capacity, like
Mm.
a streaming network, will adopt that technology, or do you think it'll stay like subscription based?
I think it'll probably stay subscription based because I think people so that's what Coil did. They just sold a subscription. You pay us $5 a month and we'll take care of these streams for you. So it was nice for creators so that the more people consume their content, the more money that they could make. But from the user perspective, you don't have to stress about continuing to watch a video. You don't have to feel like you're paying for every second because you just pay your monthly rate and this other company takes care of the payments for you. So it's cool in terms of compensating people properly, but also not causing overhead for end users who are watching the content.
So is there kind of like an arbitrage there for an X in some
Uh,
sense? Like they could pay
yeah.
creators or people that wanted to list stuff and they would stream them the payments, but they would be getting a structured payment from the subscriber that
Yeah.
might be a larger margin than what they're paying out.
Yeah, in many ways, yeah, it's actually similar to what they're doing right now. They really are kind of a marketplace between viewers and the production of content. They're doing more in-house, but that really is the fundamental business model for Netflix and a lot of these different media companies as well.
YouTube probably similar, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, well, cool. So that, yeah, I think that gives people some really good context about who you are, where you've been, what you built in the past. So let's get into Omni. What are you working on now?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, Omni is the technical successor to Interledger. So Interledger was extremely performant for payments. And, actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, it's kind of similar to what's happening with Ripple right now. For a long time, Ripple is extremely focused on international payments. And what we're seeing is that they built up relations with financial institutions from across the world with that very specific use case, but they're expanding that surface area now. They're talking about tokenization and these other financial services. Omni is kind of similar to Interledger in that sense, where Interledger was fantastic for payments. Omni lets people work across all these different blockchains, but it's far more than payments. It's all of like DeFi and tokenization at large. And so, at a very zoomed out level, Omni is just how people can seamlessly interact with the on-chain economy. You don't need to think about blockchains. You don't need to think about gas tokens and bridging, all these technical complexities. You can just access the on-chain economy like people access the internet today. They don't think about whether they're on the AWS or like Google Cloud side of the internet. They just use the internet. That's what Omni allows the on-chain economy to feel like.
So is it to like generate returns and participate in the on-chain economy or so when we talked about it before, you're kind of routing between smart contracts and staking pools and other things on the back end that are generating the best optionality for somebody that has collateral in this ecosystem. Is that kind of the gist of it, or what would you say there?
Yeah, the nice thing about how it works is that it kind of inverts the way that finance works today, where, if you want a loan, you have to go to a bank and you like talk with them. Omni takes a model similar to what Robinhood is doing with Citadel, where it's really easy to buy stocks on Robinhood. You just open the application, you say, I want $100 of Apple stock, and you have $100 of Apple stock. You don't need to think about it. But what's actually going on behind the scenes there is Robinhood is selling your order to Citadel, who is going and taking care of all the complexity of matching that order, putting it on the exchange. With Omni, it's that, but for any financial activity. And it's not an exclusive relationship with Citadel. It's anybody across the world who wants to give you a loan. They can compete in that auction and it gets filled in like 1 or 2 seconds. So you just say like, okay, I want yield on my XRP. I click a button. Cool. People from across the on-chain economy are going to all submit bids. Like I can give you 5% yield. I can give you 6% yield. And you're not going to have to think about what's happening there at all. You can just accept the one with the highest yield. So that's where this all is going. And that's kind of specifically the gap that Omni fills.
Do you give up that collateral to the counterparty, or is it in some type of tri-party agreement where that collateral is held in a custodian? Like, what is? I mean, these are all questions that I have.
Yeah, yeah. It's cool because you can arbitrarily specify. So you could say like, I want the highest yield I can get on my XRP, but it has to be an over collateralized lending protocol like Aave. And it's like, okay, maybe you get slightly less yield there, but it's safe and that it's in one of these like highly battle tested protocols. So you can put constraints on your requests like that make it really easy to manage.
Interesting. And so you could kind of pare down who you're looking to partner with in that capacity and who,
Yeah, exactly.
based on the constraints that you put forth, was even willing to bid on that opportunity or the collateral that you're posting.
Yeah.
So can you play both sides? So let's say I want a loan or I want returns. Is there a kind of a two-way street there, or is it just one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, people can participate and say like, I want this financial service offered to me, or they can compete to offer financial services for people. And so but it's really a marketplace here that like Omni has created. And the output of it is just really simple access to financial utilities. A lot of people just have constrained access to financial services today. And Omni in many ways inverts this relationship where instead of going to the bank and being like, hey, can I get a loan? You're really just putting it out into the world. And then any bank from across the world can come and compete. Like, I'll give you a loan at this rate, or I'll give you a loan at this rate. So that's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to invert it from the system we have today where people kind of like are used by finance, and we're trying to invert it where finance is serving individuals across the world. I really think that's like the true promise of crypto here.
I would agree. I think that instead of you competing or like having to convince a loan or a bank to give you a loan,
Mm,
you have other people fighting over the ability to give you a loan.
exactly. Yeah.
Turns the tables, which is really cool.
Mhm.
Um, can you give us some like specific examples of interest rates and collateral that you've seen on the platform?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, so one that we actually rolled out earlier today. So there's this protocol called Symbiotic. Um, and the really cool thing about this is it's a new use case. It's a way to kind of like stack yield on top of your ETH, and they actually work with a few other assets. But um, so you can just put your asset into this protocol, and it'll start generating yield. The difficulty with this though is it only lives on Ethereum L1. And so it's like that's, cool, but like not everybody keeps their money on Ethereum L1. Actually, like not
Oh,
many people. Yeah, yeah. So uh it's difficult for their business to actually offer this service to all the users across the industry. And so Omni has an SDK that they plugged into their website so that even if you're holding your money on a different platform than Ethereum L1, you can go to their website and say like, oh, cool, like 7% APY, and you can just click the button. And even though your money is technically on a different blockchain than where the app is deployed, you don't need to think about that. It all just gets worked out behind the scenes. So we just rolled that out today on testnet. It's going to be on mainnet in a couple weeks here. But yeah, that's an example of just like make it so that people don't have to think about the complexity of what's going on here. Just like, okay, I have money. Why can't I just use this application and get this yield? You should be able to, and you can now with Omni.
yeah. So you don't have to know the technical nuance or I've got to send this here and then wrap it and stake it and do all of that other stuff. You got to
Exactly.
behind the scenes. And
Yeah. It's crazy that we have people do that today. It's almost like it's like if we were using the internet without DNS and everybody had to type in IP addresses and move individual packets around and stuff. So, yeah, I am very excited that the crypto industry is maturing to a point where things will be as easy as just navigating the web is today. But it's taken some time to get here for sure.
yeah. So you have a UI that or you have is it mobile native or web native? Do you have an app or like how do people access this?
The cool thing is that people never even need to think about Omni. So this app that I was just talking about, it's like $1 billion protocol. It's called Symbiotic. Um, they just integrated Omni's SDK into their front end. So the users don't need to go learn about Omni or something, or
Wow.
have this simpler experience. They can just go to this application and suddenly they no longer have to think about the fact that their money is on a different blockchain. It just is easier now and just works. And so Omni very much is this layer, like this infrastructure layer that just makes things easier behind the scenes. And obviously, I want people to know about Omni, but we don't force it in their face during the user experience. It strictly makes things simpler.
So is there a token associated with your protocol that's separate? So it sounds like a B2B SaaS situation, right? It's not necessarily SaaS, but it's more like an infrastructure that
Yeah, yeah.
allows people to be interoperable in the back end and settles those and does what it needs to be able to generate the returns and facilitates that. They have a
Mhm.
front end user interface and then people go there and because of the SDK, they can just put their ETH on the platform and generate a return completely separate of what would have to be on the L1. They can be like, okay, I want to access, liquidity on Solana or somewhere else. Whatever's
Mhm.
going to generate the best yield is where you guys kind of pipe that to. Is that how it works?
Yep. Yeah. So the network is powered by a coin, just Omni. And what that's doing is it's powering this network, this infrastructure layer behind the scenes and coordinating all these agents. The really simple way to explain this, especially to people who are in the XRP community, it's just like, um, obviously, XRP is trying to take on Swift, this international kind of like payment coordination layer. In many ways, what we're trying to do, like what XRP is to Swift, Omni is to Visa. Visa makes it really easy for businesses everywhere to just accept money. Omni is basically doing that for financial services and on-chain businesses. And so it's really hard for these people to scale up their businesses today because the people that they want to serve, their money is scattered all over the place. And it's hard for those people to deposit their money into these systems. Omni, similar to Visa, just makes it so that like they don't need to think about any of that complexity. They just click the button and their money can go into the financial service. So that's another like pretty high level way of thinking about it.
That's fantastic. Yeah. If you can simplify those things for retail or anybody that's participating with crypto, I
Mhm.
think there's a huge upside. And that's so
For sure. I think that's one thing the industry's failed at for so long. They just like all these complex, like blah, blah, like, you should be able to explain it simply. Just like, all right, what XRP is to Swift, Omni is to Visa. Like, that's what it is.
yeah, it makes it simpler, faster, and more standardized.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, so the token itself, like, is there a value proposition for the token? I mean, obviously it's not investment advice, but like,
Yeah.
um, what is the value proposition for the Omni token?
Yeah. Yeah. So similarly, not investment advice. But what it does here is like the network needs the token to run. And what's the like counter to that? The counter is the more volume that flows through the network, the more fees are generated, the more Omni gets burned. It's pretty straightforward, just like, hey, more volume equals more Omni getting burned. That is kind of the balancing mechanism of the network and what happens with fees.
Does anybody needs to like hold that token to be able to transact on that? Obviously, you need to be able to pay fees on the network with the token.
Mhm.
Um, what's the tokenomics look like? What's the total
Mhm.
supply?
Yeah, there's 100 million total tokens. The nice thing about this is the end users don't need to hold Omni in order to use it. Like I said, we were pretty intentional about just strictly reducing complexity. Like nothing about the product or the network at all should add complexity to the user experience. The people who are competing to offer the like financial services to make things actually happen, they have to use the token a bit, but not the end users. And so that's the actual like utility of the token. Other than that, it just collects fees and burns the token. And this is kind of, I'm honestly pretty direct and raw about it. I think the space for a long time has been like not really sure how to communicate about tokens, but I think the space is moving to a point where it's like we're going to have legislation on like what these tokens are and how the government sees them pretty soon. And I'm personally interested in making a sustainable network that creates substantial amounts of money from fees. And like, I think about it like that is, I think it's just rational, just how people should be thinking about these networks at this point. The technology has matured to a point where it's a good test. Like, is it providing value to people? Are people willing to pay to use it? And so that's how I think about it at Omni. And so in many ways, it's honestly not a crazy model at all. It's just like, we're trying to drive volume through the network, which burns more Omni downstream of the fees.
Yeah. Well, it's the actual nature of these networks or protocols is they're just moving value and paying the gas fees or whatever's required to do that.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like you mentioned, it's just a back end process that facilitates the transfer of something.
Mhm.
No different than the email protocol. Like you're moving packets of data from this person to that person, and it's routing it through specific things that make it look seamless and easy to the end user, even though it's complex on the backside. Right.
Mhm. Yeah, totally.
How do you guys find partners? So maybe I guess the better question is who's your ideal demographic and who's your ideal partner?
Mhm. Yeah, so we're very customer focused. I think this is kind of weird for crypto. Like a lot of people are very community and ideology and stuff. We're pretty raw and just like uh, we think the technology has matured to a point where it can offer people very concrete benefits to their life. Obviously, there's still a lot of speculation happening in crypto, but people are using stable coins across the world to escape their local fiat currencies. And so I do think we are at a pretty big transition point here at large. And so we're pretty customer focused. So the team that we just rolled out, I think they have like, I think it's like $900 million like in the protocol themselves. Um, in a way very similar to a more traditional startup, we iterate on product and we talk with our customers a lot, and that's really where a lot of the like innovations that we brought to the table have come from. Just talking with customers and understanding how they think about things. On the other side of things, there's also like strategic partners here, and so I've talked with Ripple about okay, now that RLUSD exists and there's XRP Ledger, there's the EVM side chain. It's also on Ethereum L1. There's surface area for us to work together there. So we have to add assets into this network. It like is pretty easy, but you do have to do it. And so, I've been talking with them about adding RLUSD so that people can just use their RLUSD throughout the entire on-chain economy. And they don't need to think about where it's at necessarily. They can just like, oh, okay, cool. Somebody's offering a 10% APY on RLUSD. Just click button and you don't need to think about anything. You're just earning yield.
What's the latency to be able to remove it out of is that a stipulation also, like how liquid something is?
Mhm.
Um, Can you pull your stuff in and out? Is it like a money market where it's 24 hours? Is it locked up for whatever period you guarantee it, like a CD?
Mhm.
Or is it all of the above?
Yeah, it is all the above. That's
Okay.
the cool thing about Omni. It's not a specific money market or something. It's more just like, hey, you have your RLUSD on the XRP ledger, but there's this new money market. It's fixed duration. You have to keep it for at least 3 months, but if it's on the EBM sidechain, you want to access it, click one button and you can go access it. And so Omni is more the coordination layer rather than like a specific financial utility. But yeah, so it also could be some evergreen thing where, maybe APY is 1% lower, but you can pull it out at any point in time. It really is not opinionated on the underlying like financial activity that people are trying to use.
That's very cool. So you basically have all these options at your fingertips, right?
Yeah.
Are there minimums? Like, do you have to have a certain amount of value before you get access to certain products? Or
Yeah, I mean, it probably doesn't work if you do like a tenth of a penny, just because it's gonna get eaten up in fees. But past that, yeah, it's arbitrary. And that's the whole thing here. Like, really, we built Omni to help people grow on-chain businesses. Like before we built Omni, this company is about 4 years old at this point. So we actually built our own DeFi protocol, and Omni came from us needing to scale that out across these different chains because we're like, okay, even Ethereum L1 itself, it's going to have, excuse me, these sub networks on top of it, and so if a lot of the users are going over there, how do we make sure that we can still access those users? So that's actually where Omni came from. It was from our own like quest to kind of scale our business so that users could access it everywhere. That's really what we're trying to do. It's just like we're at a point where you can build an on-chain business and it can create substantial revenue at this point. And it can provide a bunch of utility to end users, but it's a pain to access it. People have to think about bridging, they have to think about different chains and wrapped assets and gas and stuff. They shouldn't have to do that. And really, there's no technical reason for them to have to do that at this point. And so that's really the gap that Omni fills.
you're accessing liquidity wherever liquidity is. Right.
Mhm.
So as the ecosystem gets built out and liquidity shifts from one chain to another, or all boats rise, which Brad talks about that all the time.
Mhm.
Um, I think that there will be more liquidity on certain networks than other ones. And if you have your collateral somewhere else and you want to participate in some DeFi protocol over there that somebody has built out that's really interesting and generates a good return, and they're looking for collateral to be able to do that, um, you should be able to access it, irrespective of where you're holding that and on what chain it is.
Yeah, 100%. You shouldn't even have to think about the fact that it's on a different chain. You should just be able to hear this thing, go to the website and click the button.
So, let's say I had in the future, okay, uh, you've got some tokenized stock. I've got Apple stock,
Yeah.
and right now you've got to go to like Hidden Road or somebody else that's a wirehouse or somebody that'll release margin against that and underwrite that and do all those things. What if I want to put that on there and be able to generate a return? Do you think that there'll be opportunities? And you're working with all these different institutions, right? So these institutions already have the licenses and certifications and things required to be able to provide these type of services. Is like, what's the vetting process look like for that?
Mhm. Yeah, I actually think that Omni will be used by players like Hidden Road, just to make their operation simpler. And so, they'll have a client, and they'll come and say like, "Hey, I have $100 of Apple stock. I actually want to like take out a leverage position and use this as collateral." Their clients are going to be more the people like the reason they're clients of Hidden Road is they're like, "I don't want to think about the
Right.
like, just do it. I want to send you an email and you just do it." And then Hidden Road, it would actually like lower costs for them because it would be pretty operationally simple. Like, okay, they want to do this and they just like put in two commands quick and the network goes and works across these different blockchains to make sure that it actually happens. And so that's how I imagine it playing out in the future.
Yeah. So maybe Ripple or Hidden Road acquires. Well, I guess they wouldn't acquire you because you're just a back end infrastructure, right? You are a company though. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, like it's funny. Like I have thought about that. Like, yeah, just given that I sold my first company to Ripple, what
yeah.
like what might happen a couple of years from now? And for what it's worth, I do see pretty clear synergies between what we're doing today and Ripple. I think we chatted about this before. I've just always been supportive of Ripple and just especially having built across the Bitcoin and Ethereum ecosystems as well. Sometimes people are like, I can't believe you like you are trying, I'm just like, dude, chill. Like
Capitalism, like it,
yeah.
and all that's just going to go away, right? And that's kind of the whole premise of what you're doing. You just want
Mm, yeah.
interoperability. It doesn't matter which of these you own or work with. Now you're agnostic. You can participate in any economy,
Mhm.
irrespective of the collateral that you invested in.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's how I think about it. Um, any acquisition type thing, like we'll see what happens here. But currently just really excited with the progress that we're seeing. And it's nice working with the Ripple team. They're accelerating. Like when I was there, obviously we were getting a lot done, but it's really cool seeing how much they're getting over the line. They've scaled up the business a lot. And yeah, they work not that far from us here in New York. So it's nice being able to work with them occasionally.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I mean, anything else that you're working on that you think's exciting or you want to let people know about?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because the biggest thing, like the core value proposition of Omni is just like, it just gets easier. Like, it's not like some brand, I guess people could access brand new things that they haven't been able to before because they might have gotten lost in the bridging process or something. But earlier today, we just rolled out the testnet version of Symbiotic where you can deposit from a different network than where the application is actually deployed. This, I think, is like a key, turning point for the industry where it's just like, we can stop thinking about chains. Like we will just think about the money we have and it might be scattered across a number of chains, but we can just use that money wherever we want. Crypto in many ways has pitched an open and free financial system, but it hasn't really played out like that because you need to be a technical beast really to like, oh, I understand all the nuances of these different chains and I'm migrating across all of them. And I have different wallets on all of them. So that I'm really excited about. There's a few other teams in Q2 that are we've taken a go-to-market strategy that is pretty abnormal for crypto. I feel like a lot of teams try to create some like big ecosystem feel where there's a lot of these kind of like lower quality, like maybe it's a college kid or something like building in their ecosystem. We've instead taken a pretty different approach where we're like, there are some pretty big on-chain businesses out there, and we want them to be our customers. And so, like we're going to go target people with at least $1 billion of capital in their system. And, we have these relationships and we're going to like nurture those relationships until they become customers of ours. So that's really what we're focused on in Q2 here is we're already getting a massive team onboarded and like just launched on testnet and mainnet in the next couple weeks. And yeah, the next few ones are going to be shipping in Q2 here as well. So the boulder is starting to roll down the hill here. So I'm pretty excited.
Momentum. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like people talk about the internet of value, right? But we're still pretty well siloed.
Yeah.
Like as an example, if I want to send you money with my PayPal, you have to have PayPal.
Yeah.
It's not like, and even though they own Venmo, uh, I can't send to your Venmo from my.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Um,
That's so nuts. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of my work definitely has been inspired by Ripple's kind of the vision has always been an internet of value. And with Interledger, we did take a step in the right direction on that. But it was limited to payments. And so there was, you could work across these different blockchains and not have to think about the different blockchains at all, but it was constrained to payments. Omni, you can send payments over it, but now, it's more just like accessing the total financial system that has been built across these different blockchain networks. So, you know, credit to Ripple where it's due. They've been thinking about this stuff for a long time. And yeah, like I said, in many ways, Omni really is like the technical successor to Interledger.
that makes a lot of sense. So look, like basically you could use any collateral to borrow against it or generate a return in some capacity. And it's kind of an open marketplace that allows people to participate there to offer those services.
Yeah.
Really compete for that collateral or that liquidity to, they might will be willing to drive more of a return or a lower lockup period or different things to incentivize people to participate with them versus something else.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to be the future of the financial system where you don't go to like one single party. It's more just like, hey, I have this amount of capital. I'm looking for a deal on these terms. And you just publish that out to the internet. And then all these different hedge funds, institutions, banks will come and compete in order to offer you that financial service. And you're not going to have to think about any of that. You're just going to get a bunch of kind of offers inbound, and the best one will just automatically be selected for you.
You don't think there'll be, I mean, I'm with you. I want to remove gatekeeping and intermediaries and friction.
Mhm.
Um, do you think there will be any of that though? Like as an example, like you said, if it's less than 10 cents, probably not going to work. But like if you've got, do you think there'll be different deals for people that have 5, 10, 25 million versus people that
Mhm.
have 5, 10, $25?
Yeah, definitely. That'll just happen when you work at larger scale. So it's on both sides. If you have a user that is looking for uh, yield on a $10 million position, they might be able to get a bit of better terms than somebody looking for yield on $100 position. But on the flip side of that as well, there likely will be these like hedge funds that
That
specialize
aggregate.
in
Yeah.
offering certain financial services. And so maybe in order to offer a financial service well, they need to have, $10 million of XRP. And maybe some hedge fund has just been piling up XRP and they specialize in that. And so they can win a lot of those auctions. So it's the cool thing is here though, is that it's an open marketplace. And so nobody is like gate kept out, but people can specialize and they can become even better than others through that like open competition dynamic.
No, that's cool. We'll have to talk more about how we can participate with what we're doing
Yeah.
in the
Yeah, for sure.
ecosystem. Um,
Yeah. You guys are doing great work. Cool.
yes, it's crazy. Like we talked about before on the first call, like
Yeah.
there hasn't been a way to be able to generate returns on your XRP,
Yeah.
and know that it was safe and secure. I mean, you've had to give it over to a counterparty. There's a lot of counterparty risk in digital assets in the space. We saw the brunt of that in 21 when everything kind of fell apart with Celsius and Voyager and FTX. And so since then, our very similar, mission to you, but specific to XRP in particular,
Mhm.
we've been working on a way to do it where it's regulated, safe, and allow people liquidity against their XRP, and a good way to be able to generate returns, or safe way to be able to generate returns. So
Yeah.
we're to market with that, and it sounds like there's a lot of synergies where we could partner on that side of things. Uh,
Definitely.
if this would be a good question. You're a year from now, what is the like best outcome you could possibly have for Omni?
Mm. A year from now, honestly, I built through enough bear markets that I kind of have a pretty strong feel on how this will play out. So what's happening right now is prices are down in crypto, not because anything has changed negatively. Things are actually great. Like for the first time, we're getting productive legislation put together. Um, and the technology at this point is pretty incredible. We are layering these protocols on top of one another, just like we did with the internet. The internet is not just one protocol. It's like a number of them. The same thing is happening in crypto right now. And the conclusion of it is that it's just really easy to use these technologies. So that is happening while we're getting productive policy passed at the same time. But I can see it out in like the field right now. A lot of teams like, oh God, like we don't have that much runway, or like they're just stressed. The bear market always washes out a lot of teams. Honestly, at this point, I think we have a competitive advantage in bear market just because we've been through it. I know it sucks. Like I know that that's the deal. And so I think over the next year here, like I said, we're going to be very customer focused and just continue to drive adoption because with Omni, it's very simple. Just the more volume that goes through the network, the more fees are generated, the more Omni gets burnt. That is just like the flywheel there. And so from my like business perspective, next year here, a lot of people are going to be more on the back step and kind of like trying to figure out what to do. We're pretty laser focused and just going to continue to drive customer adoption. So a year from now, I think uh, we're already seeing validation that this is how the space is going to move forward, where we're kind of crawling people out of the weeds here so they can it's easier to use this stuff. A year from now, though, I think that is going to be, people are going to be able to look at that and be like, definitively, this is just how using blockchains is going to work in the future.
So like my grandma, you think she'll be able to use Omni, or something that's using Omni, and be able to participate in a digital economy, and with her stable coins
Mhm.
that she gets at her bank, she'll be able to press a button and generate 7 or 8% return, and not have to worry about how that's being done, or who the
Mhm.
coordinated parties are, or how the back end works.
Yeah.
Just I never yield.
I think a year from now, your mom will be able to, and then after that, your grandma will be able to. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, if people want to find you or reach out or they have inquiries about Omni, how should they do that?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. Onchain Austin is my handle. And then all the updates that we're releasing about Omni, just Omni, OMNI, and then it's FDN, like Foundation. That's a Twitter handle. And so, yeah, anything that we're pushing out, usually I amplify for my personal. I also do more kind of like zoomed out industry breakdowns and talk about different networks and stuff that are being built for my personal. But those really are the two best places to kind of get the latest. If people are learning to or looking to just kind of get an initial like download of what Omni is, it's just omni.network. That's the website.
Perfect. That's really cool, man. I'm excited for what you're building, and we'll have to have you, come back. We'll have obviously you and I will continue conversations, but maybe an update, here in 6 months or a year, and hopefully everything that you kind of laid out there is the key.
Yeah. We'll have your mom on the next one. She'll be clicking buttons and getting yield. Yeah.
Very cool, brother. Well, thank you again for being on, and we'll have your links in the show notes below, and people can reach out.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.